Hello, I'm Diane Gia, Senior Vice President for Quebec and Eastern Ontario region as part of the Canadian Bank. Thank you so much for joining me today as we are in a conversation with Chris Hodgson, Group Head of the Canadian Banking Operations. Welcome, Chris.
Morning, Deanne. How are you?
Please sit down.
Thank you.
Chris, you lead a very significant operation of more than 21,000 employees across the Canadian banking operation. As Group Head of the Canadian Banking, what would you say your primary responsibilities are?
Well, Deanne, I would say really there's two that are really critical. One would be working with our senior management team to set the strategic direction for our Canadian banking business. And then two, equally as important, is to continue to build on the culture that we have here at Scotiabank, to enhance that culture and to look at ways to collaborate across all of our business to really support the strategy. So it's really working with our senior team and reinforcing the great culture that we have built over the years here at Scotiabank.
You've mentioned that it's been a tough year for banks. Consumer confidence is low, and there is a general mistrust, even for well-respected companies such as Scotiabank. Based on your conversation with our customers, what should we be doing to rebuild consumer or customers' confidence?
Well, it has been a very challenging period over the last 12 to even 18 months globally, and the first thing I would say there really is that the Canadian banking system has really come through this period with stellar performance. In a number of external studies, the Canadian banking system has been rated the #1 banking system in the world. And Scotiabank, of course, has come through this performing extremely well. From a customer perspective, I think that what's important is for us to reinforce solutions and advice for our customer base, and to really sit down with each and every one of them and look for ways that we can make them quote unquote financially better off, which is really what we're trying to talk about from a marketing perspective. So in the end, I think what customers are looking for is advice and value for that, and I think that our Scotiabankers are unprecedented in terms of the level of advice and service that they provide to our customer base.
I couldn't agree with you more. Our employees have done a phenomenal job at supporting our customers and the business. Canadian banking has also generated some very solid revenues for the first half of the year, despite very difficult market conditions. How do you account for this success?
Well, I go back to our employees and our people around the country. I think the results are clearly the result of a lot of hard work. It's the leadership like you and your compatriots in the Canadian banking business. I think we've got great leadership, but most importantly on the front lines and even in the areas that support our business, they've done extremely well. So I'm very proud of the fact that the results are very, very strong given the weaker market environment, but also that we've had good viewpoint surveys also. And that is something that we just recently have seen. And so we've had very strong engagement from a Canadian bank employee perspective, and I think that's very important to us.
Notwithstanding some encouraging results, there is still a lot of economic uncertainty, both in Canada and globally. How has the downturn affected the way Canadian banking operates its business?
Well, I think the adage, and I think you've heard this too, Deanne, is we do more with less. And the reality is that we have looked at all of our resources over the course of the past year, and we're asking our employees coast to coast to look at resources, to pull in where they possibly can, but most importantly then to look for ways to reinvest in some of our growth platforms and growth initiatives. So we've asked them to do a little bit more with less, but also to allow us to have the resources that we can reinvest in some of our key businesses. And some of those would be areas that you'd be very familiar with, which is expanding our whole branch platform, adding new financial advisors, building our insurance and our credit card businesses, and the list goes on. But we have to ensure that we have the appropriate resources to be able to reinvest in our businesses.
Chris, there's been a dramatic increase in Scotiabank's involvement in sponsorship recently. We love seeing our name up there, and certainly it makes all the employees very proud. But tell us about the strategy.
Well, that's been a very important part of building our brand awareness over the last few years, and we started a few years ago to invest more in our whole donor and sponsorship side. As you know, from an all-bank perspective, last year we We contributed about $43 million across the whole bank from a global perspective into sponsorships and donations. From a Canadian banking perspective, a few years ago, we looked at ways that we could build our awareness in the Canadian marketplace and get our brand awareness up. And one of the ways of doing that was to look at alliances. So we looked at things like Cineplex, which is now our Scene card, and we've done extremely well in that area. We've added to the NHL, for example, and looking at communities from coast to coast and getting into the families and living rooms of all of the Canadians across the country, because it's the #1 sport in the country. But we've looked at things like Scotiabank Nuit Blanche, as you'd be aware of, and Caravana, and Rick Hansen Wheels in Motion, a number of different things around the country. All of this has helped contribute to our awareness and has actually raised our awareness significantly in the marketplace.
Chris, where do you think the Canadian bank has succeeded the most over the past year?
Well, I would say over the course of the past year, just because it has been such a challenging year from a global perspective, there would really be two things. One would be the viewpoint that I mentioned a moment ago. I think that the viewpoint results, particularly from an engagement perspective and employee satisfaction, were very, very high, which tells me that Scotiabankers believe very strongly that this is a tremendous place to work. So that, I think, is critical. The second thing would be that we have made, I believe, some great strides in building our wealth business over the course of the past 12 months. We acquired E-Trade, as you'd be familiar with, and we're now rebranding that iTrade. And we've got two investments, Dundee and CI, and we will look to leverage those as time goes on. So we will become a leader in the wealth management business, and I think full credit to all of our leadership teams that have been involved in that, and all of the branch system for putting a very special push in terms of growing our mutual fund business. So those would be the two things that I would say over the course of the last 12 months.
You've mentioned a few times collaboration and innovation. Will they continue to be an important focus of the Canadian bank going forward?
Well, collaboration is critical. I mean, given the size of our business overall, as you know, and interacting with all of our commercial banking businesses, our small business, which you have come from before the job that you're in right now, look at our retail banking, wealth, et cetera. There has to be a very strong spirit of collaboration and referrals from each of these businesses to one another. And I think that has gone very, very well. In addition to that, the innovation aspect is something that I think we can continue to build. So we've done some very innovative things, I think, in the last 2 to 3 years. I mentioned Scene on the partnership side. Western Union would be another example from a remittance perspective. And even in your own region, where we've just opened the Metro McGill branch, we are the first financial institution to open a branch in a subway system, and we're very excited about the prospects for that. So we're going to continue to look to be innovative and even become even more aggressive from an innovation perspective. I think we need to do that to really succeed and continue to win.
One last question, Chris. We know that Scotiabank is your true passion, but when you're not working, what do you do for fun?
Well, that's a great question, and when I'm not working, which is not that often, I'm actually doing a little bit of traveling, and some of that traveling is with my family. So we have a trip coming up in December where our family is going over to Tanzania in Africa, and we'll be climbing Mount Kilimanjaro. So we'll be going on the just before Christmas. We'll be over there for a couple of weeks. And we're very excited about that because it's an opportunity for me to spend some time with my family, but also to take on a bit of a challenge and also to raise some money for a hospital. So we're very excited about that.
Oh, congratulations. Thank you very much.
Thank you.